Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of the Cuphead show. Okay, so this episode actually introduces the Root Pack into the story. So if you guys don't know who the Root Pack are, they're a group of vegetables who are kind of the first boss of Cuphead that you fight. They're one of the earliest ones that you can actually fight in the whole game. And they kind of show up and start wreaking havoc in Cuphead and Mugman's front yard, and more specifically Elder Kettle's vegetable garden. Sure enough, the episode actually opens up with Elder Kettle actually getting his own musical number. He actually starts singing about how he takes care of his vegetables every day, and hopes that one day his babies will grow up to be big and strong. And while he's actually singing, when he goes to hit that high note, he actually winds up throwing out his back, which causes him to become bedridden for the next day, rest of the afternoon, basically. And as Cuphead and Mugman kind of console him on his bed, he admits that his vegetable garden isn't safe, and that he has been nurturing his babies every day, and that his vegetables will very much likely wither up and die, and he doesn't want that to happen. And it's at this point where Cuphead and Mugman reassure him that they'll take care of his garden, and also make sure that also kind of need his pillow to make sure that he's as comfortable, and offer to get him anything he needs. And Elder Kettle does pick up on the fact that they're being a little too nice, and does point out that he's going to be keeping his eye on them, but then immediately falls asleep, with Cuphead pointing out that that's not surprising, and isn't surprised that he's out like a light. And it's at this point where it's revealed what they were actually planning to do, which is that they were actually planning to go to a picture show, and they're not going to make the 5 o'clock if they dawdle. But of course Mugman stops Cuphead before he can leave, pointing out that they did indeed offer to keep Elder Kettle's vegetables watered and safe, and point out that they kind of need to repay him for all the love and care that they've given him over the year, that he's given them over the years, and finally realizing that Mugman is right, though he doesn't want to admit it. They do ultimately decide to stay behind, and instead of going to the picture show, decide to keep an eye on Elder Kettle's garden and make sure everything is safe, and make sure everything is nice and watered. And of course, Cuphead immediately remarks that obviously nothing is happening, and he points out that's a little bit boring. But as he's talking, the Root Pack actually winds up slipping into through their backyard, and then they eventually hear something going from Elder Kettle's garden shed, and picking up several of Elder Kettle's gardening tools as weapons. They immediately pick them up and immediately go to try and figure out what's going on, and after opening up the shed, they discover the Root Pack living inside their shed, and they're actually munching on some of Elder Kettle's manure, with the three of them then having to come out once they're discovered, and of course they then proceed to actually spread a bit of a lie to Cuphead and Mugman to get them to pity them, and kind of so that they can stay. And sure enough, they introduce themselves. There's Sal, Ollie, and Chauncey, who are the three main bosses of the Root Pack. There is a fourth one, but he's not in the episode, and most people don't even know he's there. So yeah, there is a secret fourth member of the Root Pack that isn't in the episode and is never actually shown in the show. So we're not going to talk about him, but he does exist. But in any case, they then proceed to point out that all they're really trying to do is look for some place to rest their roots, and maybe take a load off, and point out that of course they claim to be orphans, and that they actually have nowhere else to go, and this actually causes Ollie to start balling up, and at which point Sal bonks him in the head, pointing out that if they start sobbing, everybody else will start sobbing as well. And they kind of can't afford to do that, and of course, Mugman insists that they don't have any place to actually for them to actually stay and rest, and and with Cuphead pointing out that that's all that's really here is Elder Kettle's vegetable garden, and that they actually promise to watch it and water it and make sure it's safe. And it's at this point where the Root Pack actually has a bit of an idea where they actually figure out how to get rid of Cuphead and Mugman and kind of take over the yard. And basically what they just do is they tell them to go and enjoy their picture show, and that they'll actually watch Elder Kettle's garden, pointing out that obviously vegetables know how to take care of vegetables. And of course Cuphead and Mugman buy this and decide to actually go out and go watch their picture show. And as you can probably expect, when they come back, the Cuphead points out that the movie was actually pretty great, but then notices that Mugman is actually locked gazes and is not moving. And when Cuphead and of course when Cuphead wonders what exactly it is that Mugman is staring at, he then follows the Mugman's gaze and discovers that much to their horror, the Root Pack has not only taken over their garden and their yard, but has also kind of invited all of their vegetable friends to actually kind of just hang out and party. And to make matters worse, they actually can't get into the party because they put a bouncer who is an eggplant. They actually put an eggplant bouncer in the place to actually keep any unwanted riffraff out of the party. And of course, Cuphead and Mugman quickly point out that they actually live there and that they're supposed to be there, but because the eggplant isn't actually checking his list, they have to trick him into thinking that his hat is crooked, and he eventually realizes he's tricked when he remembers that he doesn't have a hat. But by that point, they've actually gotten in the yard and immediately go to confront the Root Pack and try to figure out where they get off inviting all of their friends over. And of course Cuphead immediately goes to investigate Sal, he immediately confronts Sal, who's currently. And this is a very visual pun, but he's currently hanging out with a couple of hot tomatoes, quite literally. And they point out that and Sal merely points out that he just kind of invited everybody over because it's just a simple party, and that there's no harm in it. And he also points out and then the two tomatoes actually point out that they're actually going to be busting open the piñata soon if Cuphead wants to join in. And Cuphead is initially furious, but does also forget he's supposed to be mad for a bit when he realizes that they have a piñata. And Mugman eventually grabs Cuphead and reminds him that they're supposed to be angry. So and of course Mugman immediately walks on stage and insists that everybody stop what they're doing and pay attention to him, which winds up horribly backfiring, because if you guys remember from the previous episode I reviewed from this, Mugman has terrible stage fright, and of course the fact that he drew attention to himself causes problems. And it's at this point where Cuphead kind of walks up and tells everybody to beat it, but Chauncey, who is actually running the band, decides to actually ignore them and continue playing music. And it's at this point where they actually notice that there's actually two carrots there who actually point out that who actually decide that they're thirsty and in need of a bit of a drink. So they actually wind up planting themselves in the ground and kind of start sucking up the water, which winds up killing Elder Kettle's vegetables. And Cuphead and Mugman quickly realize they need to deal with the Root Pack and their friends, or the vegetables are very likely going to die. And it's at this point where they actually start coming up with a couple other ideas to actually get rid of the Root Pack. And of course one of the first things they do is try to dress up as scarecrows, but they just wind up getting pecked by crows and to get chased off. So their next idea is to call the cops and tell them that there's an out of control party in their yard. And the cops immediately show up, only to be chased off by the bouncer, who tells them they're not on the list, and they're just like, well, we tried, we're going home. And of course the Cuphead and Mugman are very distraught about the fact that they weren't able to actually chase off the Root Pack. But it's at this point where Sal points out that they'll be partying until the sun comes up, and which gives Cuphead a bit of an idea. And what he does is they actually dress Cuphead Mugman as a rooster, while Cuphead tries to induce a sunrise by lassoing the moon and trying to pull it out of position, which can only work in a cartoon, but it doesn't work. And eventually realizing they've tried everything, then proceed to sit down at the bar and start discussing about the fact that they have no idea that they've run out of ideas, and that Elder Kettle's garden is as good as dead. And what we find out is that Ollie, who's at the bar, not really with them but next to them, hears them and points out that that's actually kind of sad. Which immediately causes Cuphead and Mugman to come up with a brilliant idea to get everybody to leave. And sure enough, they immediately pull on the sob story, telling Ollie that not only is the vegetable garden Elder Kettle's most prized possession, but also remarked that since he's old, he doesn't have many years left, and he will likely die, and he will likely be dead before he can actually see his veggies grow to full bloom. And to add on to the whole layer, then remarks that he's also an orphan, which is what causes Ollie to finally to tip the scales and actually start sobbing. Which and of course, since he's an onion, he starts peeling out, and in his stench then proceeds to cause everybody else at the party to start sobbing, and sure enough, one by one, everybody begins to leave, and including the two hot tomatoes, much to Sal's chagrin, and he starts sobbing as well. And eventually, everybody leaves, and remarking that it turned out to be a bit of a pity party, and that leaves only the main root packet left. And of course, since everybody was sobbing, it just causes the whole yard to flood and just pour out through the front gate and takes the bouncer and everybody with it. And in an ironic twist, their tears ultimately wind up causing the vegetables to grow up to be big and strong, with Cuphead and Mugman crying tears of joy of their own, pointing out that it's very beautiful, and pointing out that it's probably one of the most wholesome things they've seen. But in case that only leaves Sal, with the rest of the group gone, that only leaves Sal, Ollie, and Chauncey left behind on their own, and they immediately Sal and Chauncey immediately scold Ollie for crying and letting crying and making everybody else cry up as well. But it's at this point where Cuphead and Mugman finally decide to actually kick them out, and but the group pack having one last thing up their sleeve to actually kind of trick the group to kind of pay them back for all the problems they've caused, even though it's their fault. They ultimately just point out that they're clearly not wanted, and decide to take one last drink for the road. And sure enough, proceed to kill the entire vegetable garden by sucking up all the water. Which of course causes them to become very big and swollen, and of course they then proceed to chuckle, pointing out that of course now that Cuphead and Mugman have failed in actually keeping Elder Kettle's garden alive and well, that he's most likely going to be angry about their babies, and of course Cuphead and Mugman immediately point that out, hoping that Elder Kettle won't notice, and of course Elder Kettle comically comes out and starts screaming, but of course he actually doesn't. He's screaming because he actually winds up cracking his back and fixing it. And it's at this point where he actually completely ignores the fact that his vegetable garden is in shambles, because he sees the root pack in front of him, thinks they're his babies, and immediately points out that they've actually grown up big and strong. And of course, the root pack kind of takes full advantage of this, pointing out that it seems like they're not orphans anymore, and pointing out that now they get to stay there forever. But then that winds up completely backfiring on them when it turns out that Elder Kettle was planning to turn his vegetables into a stew. And of course, this causes them all three of them to freak out and run off, and that's where the episode ends. So, of course, it's very interesting. Just the fact that the root pack exists. The root pack is obviously one of the not really villains, but it is interesting that they're kind of villainous in their debut appearance. Obviously in the game they're debtors and they owe their soul to the devil, and eventually Cuphead and Mugman actually wind up saving them and saving everybody in equal aisles. But here, they're just a rotten group of veggies that just like taking over gardens and just causing problems. So yeah, it's definitely a bit of a change of pace for them, and of course it is very interesting that they are indeed evil vegetables, even though in the game they aren't evil vegetables. It's just a little bit interesting, but I do kind of like that. I like that concept. It's a little different, but it is kind of neat, and it is also kind of interesting just seeing that the root pack has a lot more members, and there are a lot of veggies in this scene, there's a lot of veggies in this episode. I mean, also obviously, this is a bit of an internal thing, but this is a bit of a fourth wall joke. But throughout the episode, the root pack, the theme root pack actually plays throughout the entire episode, which is very funny. And of course, it's a very funny visual gag because the band that Chauncey is conducting is actually the one playing it, so it's very funny. But yeah, in case, that's gonna do it for my review of the Cuphead show. What you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks down on my way of saying thanks. So be sure to check those out. Link is down in the description. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video was the most recent one. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new, or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!